Okay, and we are now recording.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome. This is the Amherst Energy and Climate Action Committee, which was organized to guide the town in meeting its climate goals, climate mitigation and resilience goals. And those goals and the plan for getting there are adopted from the Climate Action Adaptation and Resilience Plan, whose name still escapes me every time I try to remember what it means, or CARP, which was accepted by the town council in 2021. It took 2016 as its base year. The CARP calls for a 25% reduction in carbon emissions by 2025, 50% by 2030, and carbon neutrality by 2050. So this committee has two primary functions. The first is to advise the town council and recommend or propose policies that'll help us meet these goals. And the second is to promote a just, equitable, and speedy climate response through outreach and engagement of town and local stakeholders. So with that, we go to our agenda for today, the first part of which is always reviewing the minutes. Oh, is always finding someone to take notes. So let's see, who did that last week?
I did.
Let's see. So who will take them this week then?
I can take them. I haven't taken them in a while.
Caitlin. Okay, great. Thanks, Caitlin. Appreciate it. Okay, so Caitlin will be our note taker. We have minutes to review from last week, and I have the updated minutes right here in front of me, so I will share them. Share minutes version 2. Can everyone see that okay? I'll make it a little bigger. Just make it a little bit bigger. Zoom page width. And I'll just slowly scroll down. Wait, oh yeah, that's right. This is the right minutes. Congratulate Don again on being our new vice chair.
Great, yeah.
Talked about the UMass climate plan. We'll talk about it again today a little bit. The letter did go out. Anyone see anything that needs to be changed? Keep going. Do we have a move to accept the minutes? Anyone?
I'll move to accept the minutes as they are.
And a second.
I second.
And Andrew seconding. And now for a vote. Stephanie, will you run the vote? To
Sorry,
accept the minutes?
audio difficulty. Okay, and in no particular order, Goldner,
Yes.
Allison,
Yes.
Roof,
Yes.
McElrath,
Yes.
Linung,
Yes.
Davis.
Yes.
Okay, minutes are approved.
Unanimously adopted. All right, next thing on the agenda is always to see if we have any public comment. And I don't think we have any public comment today because I don't think we have any attendees at the beginning of the meeting. So in that case, we will move right on. Let me bring up my notes here. There we go. Okay, so the first thing on the agenda is the Sustainability Festival planning. And for that, this week, I wanted to start to try to get commitments for who's going to be there when. So we usually try to do 2-hour slots, but anything you can do is fine. I usually end up staying most of the day. Probably do that again. Let's see. So let's say the slots are like 8 to 10 a.m., 10 to noon. And I'm not going to make a spreadsheet this year. People don't use it. So I think we'll just get volunteers and I'll send out a reminder. So we have 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. that's set up. 10 to noon, noon to 2, and 2 to 4, including breakdown. So that'd be a little after 4 that would end. Any volunteers for that 8 to 10 slot?
I can do 8 to 10.
I can do it too.
Thank you. And we will have to organize with you about, I will probably be there at 8 also with some stuff. And I know who was going to bring the tent. Remind me. We had a couple of people last week. It was just in the minutes. Caitlin?
I have a tent. It does have mesh siding, but we can pull it up on all corners.
Okay, what size is it? How big is it around, do you know?
It is, one sec, I took a picture.
Ah, could share the picture too, maybe.
Yeah,
bring the
yes,
tent. Yeah.
it's on my phone, so you guys might
Oh,
not be
can't
able to
share it.
see it well, but it's a 13 by 9 foot tent. Oh, my blur
wow.
is really,
Okay, yeah.
Your phone is not a face.
yeah,
13 by
it
9
said,
is
no,
even-
no, no.
Yeah, I think that's even bigger than what we usually, I think we usually do a 10 by 10, so I think that'll be fine, or less than that even. 13 by 9 sounds huge.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll just have to make sure that I put you somewhere not directly, like on an end, so that there's a little room. Because the booth spaces are marked off and they're all 10 by 10. But that's okay.
Okay,
We'll just, we'll just put you on an end or figure out maybe next to me or
or the
somewhere where
13
there's
can go, the 13 can go backwards so that the front is 9.
Yeah,
That would work.
right. But what I'm saying is they're marked off, 10 by 10 spaces are measured and marked off.
I see.
So if I put you at the end, then it's fine. It can be 13 further
Either
out
way.
because it won't impact somebody else.
Okay. All right.
But I have a note of it, so I'll take care of it.
All right, so in that case, Caitlin will rely on you for the tent. I will bring the chairs and the tables, I think a couple of them. And the heat pump booth. And the banner. So I have all that stuff. And thank you, Tony. We will need help just setting stuff up. I can't, my back doesn't allow me to do much lifting, so. All right, 10 to noon. Andrew?
Yeah, sorry, I'm muted. I can do 10 to noon.
Cool. Anyone else?
I can just stay. It's not, 2 hours is not that long.
Cool. Thank you very much. Noon to 2 or 2 to 4? Anyone have a particular?
I can do noon to 2.
Steve, thank you. And we're missing a couple people, so I'll get them next time. But Don, I think you're around this year. What time do you prefer?
I am around. So pick a time. Doesn't matter.
You wanted, well, since we don't have anyone for 2 to 4 yet, you want to do the 2 to 4 slot, and we'll try to make sure we have a couple more people there who can help with breakdown.
Sure.
Okay.
And for those of you who are setting up, you don't have to be there right at 8, just a heads up that, that's the setup time, but even if you got there at 8:30 or 9 even, that's fine. Most people show up around 9, but the earlier you get there, the better chance you have of, there's not as much traffic dropping things off and then parking your car and coming back. So it is easier to get there earlier, but 8:30 should be fine.
Yeah, I try to get there early because I have a car full of stuff and I can't carry it very far. Well, there are always guys to help carry it. So it's easier to find a parking spot if you're there early, to find a place to pull in. Then you have to move, of course, but it's easier to find an unloading spot if you're there early.
Yeah,
but if you're just carrying one tent and it comes in a sack, that's not, if you can carry it a little bit, then it's not a big deal.
And we'll likely have the Amherst College football players available to help us again, which has been just wonderful. the
They're
last
awesome.
Years. They've been really so helpful.
They're awesome.
Yeah.
All right, so I will get in touch with the remaining members about when they can be there, and hopefully we'll have 2 people at every hour. And like I say, I'll probably be there all day. I'm not even going to put my name down. I'll just be a third, and I'll probably spend most of my time in that heat pump booth. We wanted to do something for having information about PACE there. Do we have any other ideas about how to do that? How would we reach out? I mean, I'm thinking the heat pump booth works really well to get anybody who's thinking of putting heat pumps in their house, or who has a heat pump that's not working, or has issues or wants to talk about it. That worked really well. How do we do the same thing for the business community, for someone who might be a small business owner or a developer who's just happens to be walking through the crowd. There's something we can do to get them interested. It would be so great to have someone in town make use of the PACE program. Oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
I was just gonna say that we are going to have a computer set up in the booth, so I think what might be helpful is even just directing someone to the PACE program website to get information, just to sort of navigate getting people there and just kind of giving them a quick, quick information. I don't, we don't have any flyers or anything that's, that's already made up right now, so I think, we could maybe there's a flyer that could be put together. Or we could use some of the programs information and handouts that they have. So those are a few opportunities.
Hey,
I don't
maybe
know,
in the
Dawn, if you want to
program.
reach out to the program and see if they can send us, if they could send it to town hall via me, maybe see if they have some, or maybe they have flyers that we can just download and I could print out.
Why don't I
Oh, I
do,
see.
I will do it.
Okay, so Don, you're gonna look into see if PACE program can send flyers that we
Yeah.
can use.
Yeah.
Or if there's something to download. But I'm also thinking like a sign or something that says, are you a business owner? Do you develop properties in Amherst? Look here.
Are you looking for favorable financing?
Yeah, are you looking for favorable financing? Yeah, just a sign or something we can hang high up on the tent. The banner will be on the table. We could put something over that, but I'm afraid it will get lost. I'm thinking of something hanging up high, like from the.
I'd be happy to design something if
Oh,
if we
cool.
can come to figure out what it is that we wanted to say. I have the resources to be able to get it.
That's pretty cool.
That is cool.
Yeah. Don, do you want to suggest some wording or something and then send it
Yeah.
to Tony, but don't talk to each other, just send it to Tony and
Yeah. I'll send it to Stephanie and Stephanie can send it to Tony.
Okay.
That'd be
there you go.
awesome.
There you go. That would be great.
I think it might be good to have a timeline that so that in 2 weeks, I have to get this to Tony, so Tony has turnaround time. So Tony, if you could let us know, the amount of time you need.
Yeah. When do you need it by? Do you have a?
The space usually takes about 2.
Next week is
2
spring break, so
Yeah,
asking for it by next week sometime would give you time over
I would say no later than April 1st.
April 1st. Okay.
Yeah, no later than April 1st. The place that does the printing just needs enough time.
Okay.
Cool. Okay, anything else anyone wants to know or think about or brainstorm about around the Sustainability Festival?
I just want to say that we, I'm getting vendors and folks reaching out to me, and we've got some really interesting people that want to participate this year. So, if anyone wants to do, the other thing is, the demonstration area, that's a chance to do a workshop or, some interactive way to engage the attendees. I like to think of that space as more like interactive, not just being talked to, but engaging people. Like for instance, the year that we had people teaching other people how to juggle, not specifically sustainable, but yet it was really fun. And it was great to see so many people gather to do that. So, but
Yeah.
sometimes we've also had students do workshops on like a all natural facial care, and they actually created like a salt scrub, and they had little jars and people were able to make it and then bring it home. People love stuff like that. So
this is one of those things we can talk about with the Elevate graduate students as well. A lot of them have been developing or are working on something similar that is also engaging and interactive.
That would be great.
That would be great. And
I'll
I'd
add that
suggest,
to the list.
please do. Thank you so much, Tony. And my only thing is that I really need to wrap things up by mid-April in terms of like knowing exactly what's happening, because I have to put, flyers together and poster and get it on the website. So, and really, I mean, even 2 weeks before the event is kind of late. So I
Okay.
should be doing that early in the month of April. So the
Good to
sooner
know.
the better.
ASAP.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, something I've been wanting to do for years, and maybe when I retire, I'll have time, is to make a simple heat pump. So you can, sort of a person-powered heat pump or something like that, something simple that you can demonstrate. That you can demonstrate at a fair, so people get the idea. One of these days,
That's so cool.
it would be cool, but it's harder than it sounds, as it turns out.
No, it sounds hard.
Yeah.
It sounds very ambitious.
You can buy a kit, but they're expensive.
Make a heat pump kit, huh?
All right. Anything else? Not education and outreach. First topic is Don Pace. Anything new there?
No,
Yep. Okay. Tony, coordination with local groups. Updates on the event in April or March? When is it?
April. Yes,
Yeah.
April. Everything is in order. What I'm typing out now, which is including the interactive activities from the graduate students, I will send to Stephanie to send to the people who signed up. I think you, Lori, Steve are the three. And this, what I'll send is the questions that help kind of guide what the discussion will be. So you have ideas going into the panel of kind of what it is they're hoping to get.
Yep.
Otherwise, no other updates. Yeah.
All right. I do not have any updates on heat pumps, although I've been meaning to go to a one of these Mass Save, what's going on recently at Mass Save events that I think Steve sent an email out about. I'm afraid I may have already missed that one. When is that? Or when was it?
I think it's tomorrow.
It's tomorrow, so maybe I'll be able to do that.
I'm signed up too, so I am
Okay,
ready.
good, good.
Just so know that I will definitely be there.
I do have a comment going back
sorry,
two,
Tony,
two steps. No, you're okay. Does anyone in here have a map of Western Mass, a large, or know where I can get a large map of Western Mass?
I probably have an old map book. I might have a map.
Used to be you could go to any gas station.
Yeah.
and
I
get a map.
know. I've actually been looking for them, and it's like, okay, I get that phones are a thing, but so is reading a map.
It is pretty funny.
It-
You know what you do is you go to you look for a travel bookstore
Mm.
for the Northeastern United States, and they'll have a map. Travel
Great.
bookstores, travel books still have maps in them.
One activity that we can think about for the sustainability fair that has worked for us and the graduate students is having community members kind of identify where their energy comes from on a map. Not many people actually know where their energy comes from in their own home. So it's a really good interactive activity that also helps. I don't know, people like seeing where they are on a map. I don't know what that is about, but it's a thing.
I can make you a map if you want a map.
You can make a map. Like,
Yeah, I mean, not from scratch, but
I was like, that's a rare skill set.
from I can, if you want, and if you have like specific places or the most popular places where people do get their energy from, but they don't know it, I can just make you a map of whatever space you're looking at, like wherever the boundaries are, and then where the points are.
That would be great.
Yeah.
I'm going to write that down and I will coordinate through Stephanie.
You
Sounds
two can plan. I mean,
Okay.
because it's for the Elevate event, why don't
Yeah.
you two can talk and.
Is that for Elevate or is that for the Sustainability Festival?
It can be for both, to be honest.
I think it'd be cool.
It works. It functions
Yeah.
for both.
And I'm sorry, I think I cut off the Elevate discussion too soon.
No.
No.
That came to me after you said something.
All right. I actually do know someone who's a map maker, but I don't know if he has a map of Western Mass ready. But that's great to be able to get a map with specific sites on it. All right, so the next two items were heat pumps and climate resilient schools, and I don't really have much to say about either. So other than some of the rebates and stuff changed in January, and I'm not really up on how they changed, so I need to get a little more up on how they changed. And I haven't heard from climate resilient schools at all. So unless, Stephanie, you want to say something more about the heat pump program, or would you rather do that as part of staff updates?
I'll just do it as part of the staff update.
Okay. All right, so marching right through the rest of the agenda, the next thing is the UMass Climate Plan, which I will probably have something to say about at every meeting. So UMass has still not disavowed or backed off on their plan to use renewable diesel. So as far as I know, that's still the plan. They have put together they're putting together a task force, no, a subcommittee. So the chancellor has a committee on sustainability. I can't remember the correct name of it, CSAC or something like that. And that committee is supposed to sort of oversee sustainability generally on campus, but they're not the group that put together the climate mitigation plan, which is prominently displayed on, on the Carbon Zero website and on UMass websites. It's very easy to find. It's a wonderful plan. It was put together through a very transparent and democratic process with a lot of people involved. And it's a 1,000-mile up plan, right? But there were some things that it rejected. And what they're currently doing or planning on doing with the renewable diesel is one of the things that it rejected. It's actually the main thing it rejected. So they're not planning on rewriting that plan, which is only 3 years old at this point anyway, right? It's still relevant. There's nothing about it that should have changed. Minor things. There are minor changes in fuel sources and stuff like that. But there's nothing big about it that should have changed. So my humble opinion is that it should still be used as a guide. And you would think that's what they were doing, considering how they advertise it. But the subcommittee that's being put together is being charged with a much lesser task of finding ways to decarbonize rather than get to carbon zero. And maybe that's the right thing, because maybe they're having trouble just getting started. Maybe they don't know where to begin. The original plan called for a very short time scale, which is really quite unrealistic. So there's no, it's no surprise that the deadline would have slipped. But it is a surprise that they would have done something specifically recommended against, right? So if the purpose of this task force, of this new subcommittee, is to help identify honest ways of decarbonizing, then I think it's probably a good thing. On the other hand, there's a lot of suspicion, since they haven't disavowed renewable diesel, and it's really quite obviously, they're still calling it carbon neutral. In the presentation, they haven't disavowed that anywhere. There's some concern that it will not be used in that way. So anyway, I volunteered to be on it. I doubt I'm going to be asked. They did ask at least one person who was on the original letter to the chancellor from faculty. And that same group is working on a response to his response, which was to not respond. He did respond, but he didn't answer any of our questions, and he didn't address any of the issues that we mentioned, with the one exception of putting together this subcommittee, which isn't quite what we asked for, but it's something. So I'm still keeping tabs on that and meeting with faculty about it. And so far as I can tell, nothing much has changed, and I'm still remain very concerned. I don't know how to put in a request, and maybe this is something you can help with, Stephanie. They have not, last time I checked, they had not put in a request for a permit to burn diesel in the natural gas cogeneration plant. There is no request for that as of about a month ago. How do I get an alert if there is one? Is there a way to do that?
Okay, well, part of it is because they're a state agency.
Yeah.
So, this has kind of been one of those things that's kind of an ongoing, what local jurisdiction actually, is applicable and what isn't. Sometimes I feel like sometimes the campus, the UMass campus, the institution will apply for permitting and sometimes they don't.
Oh, I
So,
don't mean you, I don't mean Amherst permitting. I mean, you knew something about the state permitting,
oh, the
right?
state
Or-
permitting, well, again, and I think I directed you to,
Yeah,
if you go to the state website, I think there's, you can search for permits that have been applied for. Or
right,
you can just call the division, which
Yeah.
is applicable, and talk
Right.
to one of the,
right, which
staff
is what I
people.
did, but the question is there any way to get a flag so that if they get an application, we get notified?
You'd have to ask them. I don't know if you
All right,
can
I
probably
might,
get alerted.
I might call them and ask them about that. Because I'm worried that they're gonna go forward with it, even before consulting with the committee. All right, since they haven't, they haven't backed off on anything as far as I can tell.
Yeah, so I would say just call the department, the division that issues the permitting.
Right. So I'll give an update on this later, but I did talk to Jared, who's chief of staff, I can't think of his last name. He's the chief of staff for Joe Comerford. And they have also been speaking with UMass about their plans. So I spoke with them about a lot of different things, and I'll give an update on that later. But they are alerted to what's going on, and I am educating them about renewable diesel and what that actually means. All right, so that's all I've got, unless there are questions regarding the UMass climate plan. So, and I did send the letter, as you recall, last time we converged on a letter to send to the town council and to the town manager, and I did send it with a CC to Stephanie, and have not heard back, but I think that's not unusual.
Can you repeat the name of who you spoke with about,
Yeah, let me get his whole
UMass?
name.
Sorry.
That's okay. It's the chief of staff for Joe Comerford, Jared Friedman, Freedman.
Okay. Chief of staff for who? Sorry.
Joe, J-O, and Comerford is Comerford.
Awesome. Thanks.
She's our state senator. So, and she's been very active in a lot of different arenas, sustainability arenas. So that's what I have there. I'm still hoping that Amherst Town will write something, contact UMass and start talking to them about this. And I'm always happy to provide more information if they need more. I've been learning more and more about renewable biofuels and the California system for certifying them, and over the last few months. I don't know if I mentioned this last time. It's actually quite interesting, and worth knowing. So the California Renewable Fuel Standard uses modeling designed by DOE to determine the life cycle carbon impact of biofuels. And the studies are carried out by the companies, that actually produce the fuel. So there's not a lot of, there is supposed to be an independent consultant who's supposed to double check them. But if they say the fuel is coming from globally sourced waste oil, there's no way for them to check that. And that's what most of them say. So the way it works is, as far as the California Renewable Fuel Standard goes, there are sort of three classes of fuels. There's those that are from waste oils. That is about something like half, I think, maybe a third of those. I don't remember exactly, but there's a bunch of them. There's 100 or more of these certified fuels. And those that come from waste oils are 25% of diesel. There's, the carbon impact is 25% of fossil diesel, or so they claim. But the number of them that's waste oil and the fact that it's globally sourced waste oil is really suspicious. After that is corn oil, usually sourced in the US, and soy, sourced in the US or globally, sometimes globally as well. And those are respectively like, 50% and 60 or 75% of diesel, so they claim. The thing that's disturbing is we know that a lot of this renewable diesel is coming from South America, is coming from Brazil. Brazil just put $2 billion into renewable diesel. Yeah, and nobody on that renewable fuel standard says that it's coming from palm. Because of course, if they put palm in there, or even that it's coming from Brazil, probably almost certainly because if they put that in there into the model, it would make it worse than fossil diesel. So none of this oil is coming from Brazil, right? None of it's coming from palm oil. It's all used cooking oil. And the scale of it makes that just, impossible. It's just impossible that there's that much used cooking oil in the world. I don't believe it. So this has that smell of greenwashing, the same as the biomass industry with their the large firms using only waste wood and then clear cutting forests in South Carolina, which they're then calling waste wood. So it's a little, more than a little scary. So that's what I've been doing with my spare time, is learning all about renewable fuels. All right, I'll stop there. Get off my soapbox.
Lori, have any sort of large organizations sort of looked into the renewable diesel to investigate the sort of things that you're describing?
Yeah, so here's the problem. Yes, the Union of Concerned Scientists has Jeremy Martin, their fuels expert, who keeps tabs on this. But Jeremy's work and almost everybody's work on this area and on related policies, all the policy that has been recommended around renewable fuels is that the amount of renewable fuel be limited, be severely limited because of this, right? And originally that shouldn't have been a problem, because Jeremy Martin and everybody who's worked in this field has been assuming all along that it is used only as an interim fuel in aviation and shipping. It was never supposed to be used in power plants. And this is new. This is really, really new. What UMass is planning is at the forefront of a really, really, really bad trend. And every major oil company is retooling their refineries to do vegetable and tallow oil, right? Do vegetable and animal oil. And this is frightening, and it wasn't supposed to happen. And so the UCS has a fuels policy guy who has, legislation he'd like to see passed. But it was based on the understanding that this stuff was going to be used in transportation, right? And it was news to him when I talked to him about, power plants doing this. So he started looking into it too. I don't know where he is on that now. I don't really know what he spends his time on. I just know he wrote some wonderful blog entries, and he's their fuels person. So UCS has certainly been thinking about it, Union of Concerned Scientists. I don't know if anyone else has. I think this isn't on anyone's radar yet, because nobody thought this was going to be a big thing, outside of interim fuels for transportation. I don't see it talked about anywhere as a fuel in power plants until very recently. And now
where then did UMass get the idea to use this type of fuel in the power plant? I'm guessing they didn't come up with the idea themselves. It was probably promoted by some organization.
Neste. I mean, the oil companies are promoting it. Look at Neste's website. It is the most greenwashed website I've ever seen in my life. It's all about how great renewable fuels are. And they even say in a couple of places that they're carbon neutral, and then they immediately back off and say no. If you look at their correct numbers, if you look at their report, their own reports that they produce, they pretty much follow the California Renewable Fuel Standard as to how they're reporting it. So they're 25 to 65% of, if you believe their fuel sources, if you believe how they're modeling where the fuel is coming from, that's 25 to 65% of diesel, of fossil diesel. But they're promoting it like crazy because they see it as a way to stay in business. I mean, the oil companies are going nuts with this stuff. And I'm sure the whole power plant industry is talking about it, right? That's where they're getting it from. because UMass has people who run the power plant who meet with the New England ISO folks and other power plant owners, right? They talk about this. So, and they're all trying to figure out how they're going to reduce their scope 1 emissions. And this is a really easy way to reduce scope 1 because of the way we do accounting.
Right.
So that's what's driving this. If you guys, I mean, does anyone know what I mean when I say scope 1?
No.
Yeah, okay, so I see some no's. So when you do carbon accounting, there are 3 categories of emissions that people talk about. There's scope 1, which is the emission at your smokestack. You know, if you burn fuel oil or methane for gas, your personal scope 1 emissions are the fuel that you burn. If you take into account your electric usage and the carbon it produces at the power plant, I think that's scope 2. I'm getting a little confused, but I'm pretty sure that's scope 2. Scope 3, sorry?
Scope 2 is emissions associated with purchased electricity or
Right.
steam in some cases. So it's
Right.
emissions that are off-site, but from the energy that you use on your facility.
Right. Thanks, Steve. The scope 3 is the harder one because that's the carbon released in manufacturing something. So that's all of the embedded carbon stuff, right? And because nobody really knows how to do that right for these biofuels, and that's not really true anymore because they're doing this modeling now, right? But because quote unquote, nobody knows how to do that right, biofuels are considered 0 for scope 1 emissions. And all of the emissions are in scope 3. But we don't know how to calculate scope 3 yet. So we don't count them yet. And in fact, that's not how the reporting is supposed to work. The reporting is supposed to work, okay, you report your scope 1 emissions minus your biofuels, and then separately you report the emissions at the stack from your biofuels. And so it's really not quite as clear as it sounds, but I think that's what people are glomming onto because a lot of the standards, how fast you have to decarbonize, have to do with, you know, how fast we have to reduce our scope 1, scope 2, and eventually scope 3 emissions. People are ignoring the fact that these fuels have a bigger impact in some cases than fossil fuels and calling it 0 because it's 0 for scope 1. If you were doing it honestly, you would call the scope 1 emissions the same as you do for diesel, and you would put a negative number if you could put one in for scope 3, because some of that carbon is being recovered for scope 3 through the reduction, maybe, right? That would be a more honest way to do it, but that's not how it's currently defined. And a lot of the laws, and I don't know what Massachusetts does specifically, but I suspect there's something in the Massachusetts law about scope 1 reductions required each year or over some time scale. And maybe Stephanie knows, or Laura, I might know if she were here. So I think that's why people are starting to exploit this. They're thinking, oh, quick way to get our scope 1 emissions down to 0. We'll just burn biofuels.
Who wrote the scope standards?
The scope stuff has been around for a long time. I think it must be in the IPCC reports. I don't know, Steve, do you know where it comes from?
World Resource Institute was helped develop that. There's kind of 2 versions of it and 2 different organizations that help coordinate this, and sort of the academic institutions follow one version and businesses and corporations follow a slightly different. And Laura is more versed in this, and I can't remember now the organizations behind those sort of defining and creating those scope emissions. So I know on the academic side, when we submit, like at Hampshire College, we submit our greenhouse gas inventory, all of scope 1, all of scope 2, and only a few things in scope 3 have to be counted. All academic institutions are supposed to report them. And in scope 3, the things we have to report is sort of college, finance, travel, and employee commuting. And wastewater at the downstream sort of wastewater impacts. So there's a handful of things in scope 3, but that are specified to be counted. But there's a lot of things in scope 3 that are not, particularly the upstream carbon emissions associated with making the paper that runs through all the copy machines and printers. There's a lot of stuff in scope 3 that isn't counted because it's hard to count. So we're sort of, yeah, we are kind of putting our head in the sand because scope 3 emissions may be bigger than 1 and 2. Once you start looking at all the products that are used and the transportation those products require to get to your place and so on.
And I really do think this is new. I mean, this sudden uptick in production and use of these biofuels is still extremely new, and nobody's really reported or caught on to it yet. So it's a little disturbing. And I have brought it to the attention of UCS and, you know, Jared, Joe Comerford. I've been trying to let people know about it, but it's not getting any traction yet because nobody's really using it in that big way yet. You know, it exists, the products now exist, and they're just waiting to ramp up as the demand ramps up. The capability to produce it exists, and it is ramping up for aviation and for transportation more than anyone expected, even for that.
Sounds like they've sort of found a loophole or some gaps.
It's a way for the
protocols.
refineries to stay in business. I mean, they're going to fight for this like crazy. Yeah.
Yeah, quick Google search tells me that the greenhouse gas protocol was developed by the World Resources Institute, WRI, and the World Business Council for Sustainable Development, WBCSD, which I'm not familiar with that group. Yeah. But I believe there's different implementations of it for universities and colleges, which go through, well, at least for us, a program by the group called nonprofit group called Second Nature. I think businesses have a somewhat different way they go through for doing the accounting.
Interesting. It's the next thing I have to learn about.
Yeah, and that's what Laura's an expert because she, with her work, is advising companies, you know, on how to meet their greenhouse gas emission protocol targets and protocols.
Right.
Steve, I don't know if we looked up the same definition, but it says that the scope 3, that there are 15 categories of emissions under scope 3.
Yeah, I see that.
Those are the ones they know about.
What ones we know about and can be counted. So it's kind of a balance of, are they significant and can we count them? Yeah. And if it's yes to both of those, then they sort of get, yes, institutions must count them. But if they're not easily countable, then often it's like, oh, we won't worry about that.
Yeah. And like I say, the renewable fuel standard that California uses, they're using a model which has been tested and tested and tested again, but it relies on accurate data about land use and fertilization practices, agricultural practices, and land use change. And when you say that your fuel is globally sourced, you know, they must have some average number they're putting in for globally sourced, even if it's all coming from the rainforest. You know, it's just it's clearly not adequate in that way. And it is telling that nobody actually claims it's from palm, or because I think if you ran palm through the calculator, it would probably come out as too carbon intensive, more carbon intensive than diesel. All right, let's move on. That's all talk. That was all. I don't have anything more to say about the UMass climate plan, just my concerns about the direction they're going and some information. So the next thing on the list is draft solar bylaw. Steve?
I have no updates. Trying to think. I did attend a meeting a couple of weeks ago, and they are just doing what they've done before, slowly slogging through, discussing very specific wording. And oh, what were the deals? Oh, they were they were discussing the submittal requirements, and what they were finding, at least according to some of the CRC members, that the submittal requirements also sort of included standards for compliance, which is gets confusing because submittal requirements are what a proponent for a project has to submit, and putting requirements into this, like performance requirements, like must reduce the impact of X, Y, and Z. That's not the place for them. So they're having to sort of disentangle the what needs to be submitted and how to define some of the standards. One example that they were discussing a couple weeks ago was a glare analysis to determine whether or not glare off of the proposed solar panels is a concern. And I learned after that, it's not hard to do a glare analysis. There are tools developed by the Department of Energy that are available that you can do that. It becomes harder to determine the level of concern or level of impact of that glare. And the tools provide some kind of ranking of it, but still it sort of comes down to, how much of an annoyance could it be? So they are going to have to sort of grapple with setting standards. If they're going to ask for a glare analysis, they should have some standards in there for what's an acceptable amount of sunlight reflection and what is not. Anyway, so it's a lot of details, and it's kind of fun to watch in a weird way of them really getting into the details and trying to figure out how you write a bylaw that makes it clear to people who are going to be proposing projects and clear to the town people, the permitting agencies, how they're going to interpret those rules.
I'm a little surprised that glare is an issue, because you'd think that, presumably these things are facing mostly south and mostly up.
Yes.
So any glare, you'd have to be pretty high up in the sky to even see it.
That's right. So most of the glare, I went through and I looked up and found a couple of examples of glare reports for different projects. Glare typically is a concern at ground level or near ground level only in the very early morning hours or late afternoon hours when the sun angle is relatively low. And and then the amount of glare off a solar panel, it depends on the angle, and the shallower the angle of incidence, sort of the more reflection you get. So it's interesting.
But it's also true that the less likely it is to hit someone on the ground.
That's right.
So it's,
but it depends on the topography. So if a solar panel,
exactly,
solar field is down in a low area and there's a road up on a mountain or a hill slope in the right direction,
you have to be on the south. You'd have to be like on the south side, and then
it'd have to be south of the array.
you wouldn't put the array. You wouldn't put the array below the south side of a mountain.
Well, if it's a gentle slope, it could be down in a valley and there could be a road up to the side. So those are the analyses. My reading of it, my interpretation is like glare is not too much of a problem. It could be if there's airports. So that's one of the things these analyses will do is trace flight paths and then determine if glare could interfere as pilots are bringing an airplane into an airport.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, that's sort of one example of glare analysis, is one example that they are sort of working through as a requirement and chugging along. And I don't know what their timetable for getting a version complete and sent back to the town council. That will be the next step when CRC is done reviewing it and are happy with it. Then they'll send it to the council and there'll be further debate about it before the town council votes to adopt it or not.
I think it gets referred back to the planning board as well.
Oh, okay. So after CRC is done, then I'll go town council and planning board and others. Yeah. Well, hopefully we'll be involved. The CAC, I hope, will be invited to read it and provide comment at that stage.
Well, I'll make that happen. So
yeah.
Other questions, input about solar bylaw? Okay, if not, transportation, Tony?
No updates. I saw in the last meeting agenda, not the agenda, the meeting notes, there was something about freezing. Oh, I should look it up.
About freezing.
And I was interested in the freeze of funds for charging stations.
Oh, yeah.
Ironically, can you update me as to what that is or what is happening with that.
Okay, so I was the one who reported on that. The last I heard, so the Trump administration has been freezing funds. And a judge in Rhode Island, I think, has been trying to unfreeze them, and they're just not paying attention. There's been court orders and court orders on to obey court orders, and nothing's happening. And one of the funds that was frozen that has not been unfrozen was last I knew. Now this was 2 weeks ago, but 2 weeks ago they froze $152 million or 156 million, something of that order, worth of IRA money that was supposed to build charging stations in the state.
It's through the
And-
country, actually. It's the NEVI project, which is the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Funding.
Okay.
And it was supposed to go through the interstate highways so that there would be like every 25 miles, there'd be a charging station. It was, yeah,
That's a great plan.
yes, it was a great plan. Unfortunately, I don't think it's
First.
been pulled. So, yeah, it's, if you look it up, it's NEVI, NEVI.
Thank you.
Look that up and get
Thanks.
information about it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Following up on that, I noticed in the corner of the town parking lot behind CVS, there's a couple of charge point stations that look like they're set up but not yet operational.
That is
I th-
correct.
Are those ones that the town got funding for and have set up? Were those
Yeah, I've
town
been
sponsored?
talking about those for a while. Those are level 3. We have 2 level 3 stations now.
Oh,
So that's what those are.
Happy
they will
dance.
be when they're up and running.
When they're up, yeah, I mean, they're at this point, it's really up to Eversource, to then switch on the power is what we're waiting for. But, yeah,
Cool.
they're installed. So, that would have been part of my update. So just
Oh,
got ahead of
They
that
just-
one. That's good.
When I saw them, they looked so sad behind big piles of snow and a little bit of yellow caution tape wrapped around them. And
What's the maximum kilowatt output from Stephanie?
I don't remember off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up.
All right, any other transportation news? Okay, I do have a little bit of a regional and state policy update, since I did meet with Jared Friedman
Friedman.
today, Joe Comerford's chief of staff, and I have some notes on that, which I will talk about a little bit. So we were concerned because 2 things that are sort of ongoing. One is this First Light relicensing process that many of us have been getting emails from Joe Comerford about for a while. First Light runs the Turner Falls Dam and the pumped storage facility at Northfield Mountain, which is a facility where you pump water uphill into a big reservoir and save it for a day when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining and you need energy. These sorts of facilities are really important because otherwise you don't have any energy when there are no renewables. Right now, the more typical thing that is done is you can turn on an oil burning or a methane burning plant in a matter of hours or less even. So people bring oil plants online, or not so much coal in this part of the world, but oil and methane plants online when they don't have renewables available. So pump stations like First Light, like the Northfield Mountain facility, are really important. Huge storage facilities that I think that provides like a gigawatt or something like that. It's enough to light 1 million homes when it's running full power. So it's a really big facility. It's been up for relicensing, and from talking to Jared, I get the feeling that there are 2 things that Joe has been doing that were concerning in regards to that. One is we've been getting emails about she has concerns about it, make your comments known. Here's the website to do that on. What I got, and the other one is that she's sponsoring a bill called an Act to Define Clean Energy or something like that. That would define clean energy to exclude pumped stations like Northfield. And I tried to get out of Jared why it's not clean, and I didn't really get a good answer for that. I did get, and it's been sent to you guys and will be added to the packet, an email. You did send it, Stephanie, did you send that out yet? I sent it right before. meeting. Okay, yeah, and it will be added to the packet as well, for anyone listening. It was an email just outlining, it was an email that contained a link to Joe's comments on the project, to DEP. And that's useful because it sort of lets us know what she's thinking. But the idea that I got is that she's been assuming from the start, they're not in this to shut down First Light, which is what I was worried about. If you define clean energy as, if you exclude pump storage stations from clean energy, what does that mean for First Light going forward? Will it have to close because it's not clean? And I got from Jared that that is not her intent. And at the same time that there have been a lot of concerns, and what those, we can talk a little bit about what those concerns were. I can tell you a little bit more. But she didn't think that the act to define clean energy was to, you know, one of the things that the new energy bill did not address, apparently, that we got a new energy bill in November of 2024, but it did not address energy storage siting. It addressed solar siting, but not energy storage siting. And there were some folks who were upset about that. And so I think that bill was put into place to address that. And I don't think they think it's actually going to pass. That's the impression I got. They don't think that, they think it's already been discussed and it's not likely to pass. I'm still concerned that they would support it. But I understand if she has constituents that want to see this, then maybe she felt obliged to at least try. It doesn't seem to be something they're passionate about killing. so that gave me some, I still do think we need to stay on top of this and send our comments to Joe so she sees the other side. I think it might even be a good idea for ECAC to send a note. And if that's the case, I can write something up and we can talk about it next time. She also thought that, Jared rather also thought that, he also thought that DEP or maybe FERC would still be accepting comments for another 20 days or so. Now, I didn't see that DEP was, and FERC has a generic site for comments. So I wrote to Jared again to ask what he meant by that because I wasn't sure where to submit. But if they will be taking comments, I do think it's probably worthwhile that we put one in. And if it's 20 days, we have at least one more meeting to discuss it, but it might be cutting a little close. So since I couldn't find a place to put a comment in, I didn't know what to write. I was going to try to mock something up for this meeting, but I didn't. So what might happen if I don't have a chance to actually, if we don't have a chance to do it as a group, I might just send in a note myself as chairman of ECAC and would encourage all of you to send in your own comments. Some of the things that, the three groups that have been most vocal on this were the Franklin Regional County of Governments, the Connecticut River Conservancy, and a group called Western Mass Rights of Nature, which I believe was started by someone at UMass who I know. They seem to be very concerned about the state of the river. All right, I'm going to stop talking because I see Don and Stephanie's hands up. So Don, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I just wanted to be clear. You're talking about, with FERC, you're talking about putting in comments on the renewal application, the license renewal application.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting the two things involved. There's the
Yeah.
license renewal, which we need to speak up about, which is not a done deal yet, although everyone's expecting it to pass. And then there's also just to Joe regarding this act to redefine clean energy. Go ahead, Stephanie.
I was just going to caution that if you send a letter from chair of ECAC, I think it's something you want to make sure you all review, and at
All
least
right,
you don't
okay.
have to have an official vote. If you want to do one on your own, you can, but you shouldn't sign it as chair of the ECAC. You
Okay.
should sign it as yourself.
Okay.
And I would encourage, you could each, sometimes for something like this, it's better to have individual letters
Yeah.
than as a committee, or if you do it as a committee, make sure all your names are listed.
Okay. All right. So if there's time, maybe we'll do one next time together. But meanwhile, I will try to find a link to send to ask you to submit a comment, and if one still exists. We've done this before, at least once before. I think I asked the group to send comments, but that was a while ago now. And yeah. So anyway, the things that they're concerned about are the presence of short-nosed sturgeon, which are apparently present upstream of the Turner's Falls Dam and could be present downstream if they made accommodations for them. There is, that was another thing. The other thing that they were concerned about was to create a decommissioning fund, which worried me. You know, I don't want to see this thing decommissioned. I want to see it repaired, replaced, made better. You know, it's an old dam. It probably needs repair. It might even need replacement. But the idea of a decommissioning fund bothered me. So there are at least some people who are thinking about that. I don't think that is one of, again, I didn't get the sense that that was one of Joe's goals. And the other thing that Stephanie's mentioned before is erosion around the river, and just water quality generally. So water quality is the thing they have to prove, right? That's the thing. They have to meet water quality standards to get their renewed license.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm trying to
One
think.
question about the decommissioning fund.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I mean, because I think typically when you have any kind of, you know, power generation, like at some point there's a lifespan and you're going to have like a decommission plan. So
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it's more cautiously making sure that there's funds to take care of it when it's done down, you know, on the other side of its lifespan. So I'm just wondering if that's the case, if they were looking to get it decommissioned, or if it's just ensuring that there are funds when that time comes.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right, Stephanie. I think that these are just funds if the time comes, but I do think that at least that's the way it's worded in Joe's comments, right? If you read the link to Joe's comments on the DEP website. But I do get the feeling that there are constituents who would like to see it decommissioned, who would like to see the dams taken out of the Connecticut River, which I would say is a laudable goal, but something we would really, it would do more harm than good if we did it now. So I think you know, and the same thing with Northfield Mountain. You know, it is hard to site facilities like a pump storage facility. You have to destroy the top of a mountain to do it, and that's no small thing, and it has impacts. And there was another issue around this that I didn't quite follow, which I think is the most important one actually, regarding that there are financial repercussions for defining Northfield or any other pump storage as either clean energy or not, right? You can participate in this REX system that I don't understand. You can, you know, there are big financial advantages to being a clean energy source. And I think there are people out there who would like to see that industry not have that advantage. So even if it doesn't produce carbon output, it still shouldn't be considered clean. So I you know, I don't agree with that. I do think that any energy source, any energy infrastructure that you build is going to have impact on the environment. And what you need to do is what is being done, which is to make sure water quality is being maintained or improved, make sure that the environment is being considered as much as possible, make sure it doesn't crash anybody's property prices, you know, take care of people, take care of the environment as much as you can in doing what you need to do. But everything has an impact, and it seems a bad time to be trying to make this not a clean energy source. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Well, everything has an impact, but some things have a lot worse impacts.
Right, exactly.
And non-fossil fuel energy generation is far lower impacts on health and health spending and disease and death than fossil fuel generated energy. But people rarely connect the dots. Yeah, so the other interesting thing that Jared mentioned is that
they only introduce legislation once a year. So if there's something we want them to introduce next January, we should be thinking about it now.
Wow.
And that brought up the renewable diesel thing. Because, I pointed out to Jared, we only had a half hour, and I spent the last 10 minutes bending his ear about renewable diesel. If you get rid of pump storage stations, then what you're doing is opening up, you have to burn oil, you have to burn something, you have to have power when the wind doesn't blow and the sun doesn't shine. So if you don't allow things like pump storage, you're making more room for things like renewable diesel, which is a really bad idea. So there is a guy at UCS who does fuel policy, and I have it in my mind to have another meeting with Jared. I don't know it's worthwhile having him meet with ECAC yet. I may just meet with him again and try to connect him to the guy at UCS who does fuel policy, because he has some really good ideas for laws to implement if you want to avoid destroying the planet by using too many biofuels. So I might work on that on my own. I think that's probably outside the purview of ECAC, but if anybody's interested, I will be talking to him about that. He was particularly concerned about energy bills, about lowering energy bills, that he recognizes what those of us have known for, some of us have known for a long time, which is that as you decrease the number of users, as you put more heat pumps in and decrease the number of people using gas and oil, you still have to maintain the same infrastructure and you're delivering less product. So the product has to become a whole lot more expensive, and that's starting to happen now. And so that's really their really big problem right now. And I'm a little worried that if renewable diesel is going to make that cheaper, then they'll go with renewable diesel, right? So I'm, he made it really clear that that was the biggest item, I think, on his agenda right now. Yeah, so if we can do anything, if we have ideas for killing two birds with one stone, for finding ways to make things greener and cheaper, even better.
Well, that there potentially is an opening for us at the local level. People are complaining about high energy bills. Politicians and governors in the New England states are hearing that and starting to do things. And some of the proposals in Connecticut, I think, and maybe Maine, were to eliminate some of the renewable energy surcharges that are on utility bills, on customers' bills that fund things like the Mass Save program. And, all they really are hoping to do is reduce the energy bills enough so people don't complain as much. But we could encourage people to do the Mass Save program and do the low cost, high impact things like insulation and air sealing. That's the way to save money on your energy bills.
Right.
That doesn't take a huge amount of money. If you have a huge amount of money and own a home, then maybe the heat pump is a great way to go to save even more. But there are low cost, simple ways to reduce your energy use.
I
think the problem is that there. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I just wanted to say maybe something to consider for that is there is also like a huge population of renters that just don't have the options. So whatever the energy cost is, or whatever your landlord wants to do, is just what you have. So
you're stuck with
it. True, but Mass Save does have programs for renters. So they will come in and do an energy assessment for renters, focusing largely what's inside the apartment, and provide some things that renters can take advantage of.
Yeah.
I didn't actually know that, so I'll look into it.
Yeah, check into it. Yeah, I think I'm not exactly sure what they can do.
It's not a lot, Steve. Unless it's changed over January 1, it's not a whole lot.
But there's also opportunities for landlords to work with Mass Save. So another avenue would be to encourage tenants to ask their landlords to work with Mass Save and to implement some energy savings. And this could be something we talk about, say, at the Sustainability Festival. If Mass Save is going to be present in some form, the least we could do would be to encourage people to go over and talk to the Mass Save people at their booth to learn how they can sign up for these programs and begin saving money.
Yeah, there are some things Mass Save can do without the landlords, without needing to involve the landlord.
Right.
definitely. But the big stuff all involves the landlord, and what I'm hearing from people from last year's sustainability festival is they've approached their landlord about it and they're just not interested.
Yeah.
So that's the problem. I think the two big problems in New England are landlords, number one, and number two are just old leaky houses that there is no good solution for. I mean, I have friends who live in the Boston area who have, row after row after row of house there has a half dirt basement, right? With with a big old huge boiler in it, and everything leaks, and there's just, yeah, you can seal up the basement, but Mass Save isn't going to pay for that. You have to pay for that. And that's huge.
Mass Save did air sealing in my basement, which is basically a dirt basement.
Really? Oh,
Well,
they did this
they put foam in all the gaps and stuff.
Yeah.
They did
Yeah.
a lot in
No,
our,
it-
in
When
ours
did
as
you have
well.
that done, Andrew?
3 years ago.
Okay, I should tell
Yeah,
my
they did. I have a house that was apparently built in 1800, and they did a lot for it. Although it's still very leaky, but there's only so much you can do.
Right. There's only so much. But I don't
Yeah.
think my friend has called Mass Save in the last couple of years, so maybe he should try again.
Yeah, it's something they
Last
can
time I
try
saw him.
again, and I think you can get a new Mass Save assessment every 5 years, or
Yes. Or
I
So-
thought it was
It's
every
even
3
less
years.
than that.
Or maybe
Yeah,
it's 3.
Mhm.
might even be 2.
I think it's 2, actually.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things people are complaining on social media about, the high cost of their electric bills, and it's like, my bill went up by $300, and what often they don't seem to understand is the difference between the total cost and the usage, the kilowatt hour usage. And so they don't know if the kilowatt hours went up or if the price per kilowatt hour went up. I'm wondering, just off the top of my head, if there's any way that ECAC at the Sustainability Festival could have an example utility bill and help people interpret their bills and understand them a little bit better.
That's a great idea.
Like how to understand your Eversource utility bill.
That would be a great info session. We
Mm,
haven't done one of those in a while, so that would be a great one to do as part of a meeting too.
Ah, good idea.
That's
Oh,
awesome.
at an ECAC meeting?
Yeah,
Oh, I wish we'd thought
we
of that.
did
a
those
month-
education series.
Right.
We haven't done one in a while, and that would be a great one to do.
I
Mhm.
wish we'd thought of that a month or two ago, before the cold weather. Maybe we can work toward something like next fall, before the cold weather hits, when there's still time to do a little bit. It seems late to do it now. I don't know, but
Let me think about it. I can imagine perhaps like even developing a handout on how to interpret your Eversource bill that we could use at the Sustainability Festival. That would help
Sure.
people at least understand if their bill has gone up because of a price increase or if it's gone up because of a energy use increase. And that's
and also how to decrease your bill.
well, yeah, that's once you find out why your bill has gone up, if your energy use has gone up dramatically, then there's certain things you can do to find out why. If the energy hasn't gone up, but you're complaining about the increase in the dollar amount, well, yeah, that's a somewhat different problem to address.
But you
Maybe-
can tell if you look at your bill, you can see the rates. The bills
Yeah.
all have the information. It's just a matter of finding it.
That's right, and I think a lot of people, they just see the bottom line and don't know if it's because the rate went up or because their energy use went up.
Of
So the
course.
And
classic
it's a
is like
lot of numbers with a lot of, it's a lot of information.
Yep.
And like you say, Andrew, it's there, but there's so much that I think people often feel a little lost and don't understand what
yeah,
it means. Like what's KWH versus KW?
Yeah.
Don't understand the difference in those
Exactly.
things. I think what might be helpful for the festival, I know you were talking about having a sign about, the PACE program, and maybe it would be good to have like one big kind of sign that says, how do you interpret your Eversource, your utility bill? How to, what is the PACE program? And are you a business that, whatever, just one sort of, thing that has the bullets of what you're providing at the booth, so that you have all of that information in one place about what people can learn by stopping to talk to you all,
Mhm.
be helpful, rather than different stuff in different places.
Stephanie, do you know, is Mass Save going to be at the festival?
Well, I was gonna cover that. CET will be there.
CET,
They are
okay.
a mass save provider.
Right.
So they're gonna be there for the heat pump program, but they will have information about the mass. I mean, that's part of what they're doing. So they're not there, they're more there for the heat pump program than as a mass save provider, but they are one, so they can answer questions.
Stephanie, I like your idea. I mean, it's almost like inviting people to know what information we can give them. Hey,
Right,
come to this booth. This is what you could learn. Are you interested in any of these things?
right,
Open
Yep.
invitation.
Yep.
As opposed to we're just the Energy and Climate Action Committee.
right.
Yeah.
So how do we, I'm sorry, I spaced out for just a second. How are we gonna advertise that? Or how do we get that word out? We're doing
Well,
it?
I was saying at the festival, you have that information just kind of present, but, and I don't think anyone would have to bring their own utility bill, just showing them what the information is on an example of a utility bill can be helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I guess the question is,
Eversource
how do we-
provides a sample bill like on their website,
Yeah.
and I mean it's actually pretty useful. We could just take that and
Right.
show people. Yeah.
And
But how do we,
isn't there a graph that shows your usage in the
Mhm.
bottom of the bill? So I mean, it's like
Yeah.
Yep.
it's like a
Yeah. So yeah, we could
Sure, you-
we could just get Eversource's example and just do it. The Eversource has kind of done this for us.
but how do we let people know that this information will be available? Because on the map, it just says, ECAC or something like that, right? How
Well,
do we-
I mean, there's gonna be other providers too. I think we just, maybe when we do a press release about the event, we can just say ECAC will have, will be able
Information
to
about-
provide. But, there's other groups and things that are gonna be there too. So, I mean, I could just summarize, one or two things that will be helpful. Because CET will be there about the heat pump program. So I
Right.
wouldn't specifically send people to you about the heat pump
Right,
program. I would really, want them to go there, but for the, the information about PACE and information about the utility bills, that might be something to highlight in the press release.
will my heat pump help booth be a problem, you think, with?
No, no,
Okay.
not at all.
Okay,
No,
good.
because you're giving more general information about, sort of the technology and,
And I
and-
can point them to.
exactly.
the
Yeah.
heat pump
We
program,
we
right.
can also talk about the Valley Green Energy, the supplier, since that will show up on your bill, like if you're what supplier you're
Yep.
using. So that's an initiative we like to talk about.
Yes, we do.
Yeah,
Thanks, Andrew. That's great. Great point.
Just so it's clear, what questions we can answer, if anyone has like a sandwich board or like those chalk sandwich boards or something like that, we could just put like a list of common questions that people can come to talk to us about, just for clarity, or some
Out
kind of
front.
poster.
so sort of like the business, the idea of, I don't know about a sandwich, or is a sandwich board like one of these, okay. Having that out front might be in the way of people walking, but I think if we're gonna do a sign that says, PACE information here, we could probably do something similar for pick 3 or 4 questions. Maybe next time we'll try to pick 3 or 4 questions that we want to make prominent. Do you understand your energy bill? Do you want to understand your energy bill? Do you want to, something like that we can just hang across the top of the tent. That might work. Do we want to talk about that next time? Just come up with a few questions. So think about what sort of things you want to be able to answer for people, what questions you think they might be interested in. That maybe other booths are not answering. Yeah. All right, so with that, we've sort of wandered a bit. Let's go to, should we go on to staff updates?
Sure. So, as Steve mentioned, he did see the two fast charge stations that are in the lot that's behind CVS. It's to the right of the CVS lot, if you will. And it's all the way in the right-hand corner of that large municipal lot. And those were installed over the last few months. As Steve also noted, they're installed, but they're not operating yet because it's waiting on the utility. There's also a few final things that we have to do. They haven't been marked, painted yet because of the snow, but hopefully that will happen sooner than later. But that's really exciting, and they're going to be outfitted with a more universal plug end so that it won't be specific to just ChargePoint or the you know, the Tesla models can also use them as well. So it'll be more universal, which we're pretty excited about. Then let's see, we have, oh, we just got approved for a Mass CEC funding for a feasibility analysis of on-street charging in the town. So I had applied for that fairly
What sort of
recently.
analysis?
So it's feasibility analysis
Feasibility.
for on-street charging. So right now, all of the charging that we have for EVs in town are all in lots. And they tend to be like those, you know, dual head stations. These are more like pole mounted, you know, single use access for charging. So we're gonna have a feasibility analysis done for that. So we did get funding for that. So that's exciting. That's probably gonna happen sooner than later. And then we have, let's see, the heat pump information session is actually happening next week. It's next Tuesday, the 18th at 7 p.m. So there is an article on the town's website about the heat pump program, and in that article, there is the Zoom link to that information session. There's information about it and a link to it. It will also be, I don't even know if I did it yet, but if I didn't, it will be on in the town's calendar. So it'll be located there in terms of people being able to access the Zoom information session.
I think you may have sent us a link to that press release that, but maybe.
I did. I'm almost certain that I sent you the press release, but it
Yeah.
is in the town. It's on, if you go on the town's website, it should be, at least it was the other day, but it should still be there. There should be a news story on the town website about the heat pump program. So the links are there.
Okay, cool. Just looking to make sure I can find it.
Yep. And then just wanted to let you know that we are going through the FY26 budget process. So I have my meeting with the Joint Capital Planning Committee this Friday at 2, and once again asking for the same funding, 250,000. For operations, I did request again for an energy manager, also for a part-time administrative support person. I'm just gonna say right up top, I know we're not gonna get them. I just think it's a really tight time right now. It's very tight. And
Yep.
I'm not sure you're aware, but I think that, you know, there's a fiscal deficit, or there's a deficit in the town's budget. So I think, you know, it's just a really, really tight time. And, you know, a lot of federal funding's getting cut. So that's not just obviously for the things that I'm working in, but just pretty much in all sectors of
Yeah.
town government. You know, there's just cuts, federal cuts that are going to be happening. So it's a really, really lean, these are going to be lean times. We're not going to get everything we want. It's just not going to happen. So, but I keep it in there because at some point, you know, there may be a change and then there will be an opportunity to secure that. But as far as the 250,000 for the capital request, I'm pretty hopeful that we can maintain that level of a budget for the department. I'm really tying that up with the facilities work and also transportation funding. So again, if we just put in 2 EV charging stations, I think I told you, at the APD, the police department. So, you know, that came from sustainability funds, but that was a collaboration with APD facilities and me working together to get those installed. So, you know, the sustainability funds cover mainly, you know, like transportation projects, building like weatherization, feasibility studies, that kind of thing. And also, supporting, you know, the food security piece with the community gardens. There's also a portion of funding that I've requested for continuing to support community gardens. So those are kind of like the 3 main focus areas of that funding. And then, as we mentioned for the Sustainability Festival, I did want to say that CET is going to have a presence promoting the heat pump program. They are a Mass Save provider, so the questions about, you know, Mass Save, you know, ostensibly, if you have someone at your booth and they want to know more about Mass Save, you could send them over to the, you know, even though they're there for a heat pump. I mean, the Mass Save process is part of what we're getting people engaged to do. So if you look at the if you look at the article about the heat pump program, it's, you know, it mentions that, you know, people are going to be guided to go through the Mass Save program, you know, to make sure that they have their homes weatherized and all of that, you know, prior to moving forward on heat pump installation. So that's all I have for today.
Thank you, Stephanie, as always. ECAC member updates, anything?
Just a question for Stephanie.
Oh.
Do you know if the solar on the landfill, how that's been performing over this winter and last fall?
I mean, we're not the owner of that, but as far as I know, I mean, we're getting credits where, you know, I think it's performing as fine as far as I know. I haven't heard otherwise. I think I would if there were something amiss or not functioning properly. I'm pretty sure someone would contact me about it.
Well,
But
from my experience at Hampshire, the system can go down and be offline for days or weeks even, and no one notices.
Oh dear.
So hopefully somebody in the town is monitoring, and the company responsible is also monitoring.
Well, you know, we're still getting credits on our utility bill, so I'd have to assume that it's generating, because otherwise because we're applying those to a bunch of different accounts. But I haven't heard otherwise, but I can, you know, I can double check, but I haven't
If
heard.
there's any way to see what how the production is doing compared to its expected production on a month-by-month basis, that would be really useful to know, just to make sure everything's going as it's supposed to be.
That would be interesting. It'd be nice to add that to the dashboard if we could, although I know it's not owned by us, but still. Your
Yeah, we
tax
were
dollars at work.
supposed to, yeah, I honestly, it's been so long and I haven't, we were supposed to have some kind of access to monitor for educational purposes.
Right.
So I can double check, because I know that was supposed to be something. I just haven't looked at it in forever, so.
Yeah, I mean, if we have access, we could build a little educational program around that and help people understand how beneficial that kind of solar is to the town and the community.
Cool.
Okay. I don't know, again, you know, we don't own it, but we lease it, but I can find out.
All right, so let's see what we got next. I think we are coming to the end of our agenda. Anything else? Updates, Stephanie? Questions for Stephanie? If not, we are at the public comment period, and I don't see that we have public right now, so I think that means we can adjourn. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second it.
All right, in that case, all in favor, say bye.
Yeah.
Say goodbye. Yeah.
Bye.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Bye.
See you in 2 weeks.
Bye.